now I am proceeding to the second presenter, who is Marco Siddi, PhD, a leading researcher at Finnish Institute of International Affairs and assistant professor at University of Cagliari in Italy. The title of presentation is Italy's Politics of Forgetting. So, welcome, Marco. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Olga, for the kind presentation, and thanks for inviting me to this panel. So as you rightly said, I will slightly change the geographical focus. However, I will also make some conceptual remarks that are relevant to our discussion, and I will be talking about, in a way, rewriting the history and the memory of Italy's past of the Second World War, with a focus on not a pseudo-fascist movement, but actually fascism in the country where it all started. So I hope it is still relevant to the Eastern European focus. And I will try to share my presentation. Let's see. Okay, right. So I will talk about the link between historical memory and foreign policy, and specifically about the politics of forgetting, which, as Per was already alluding to, is also part of, it's an intrinsic part of memory politics, because when a narrative is formed, the process automatically involves a process of selecting events and issues that automatically exclude other events. So some past work I've done on this focused on questions such as why and how do political leaders refer to historical events when talking foreign policy, and what do they hope to achieve, and what are the consequences, sometimes unintended, of their narrations. We did a special issue which became a book in 2022 with a Ukrainian colleague, Lina Klimenko, with international politics, Palgrave, where we explored the topic conceptually, and then we had a number of case studies on a range, quite a broad range, geographical range of issues. And here you see the titles of the articles and then chapters. So in this work, we highlighted 5 ways in which policymakers, foreign policy leaders, use historical memory in foreign policy. The formulation of historical analogies, so comparing an event in the present to an event in the past. This I don't think I really need to explain it. I think the most frequent analogy that we see even today is, at least in the West, is that of Munich 1938, which has been used and abused in many different contexts, from Iraq to Syria to Yugoslavia, and today in the context of the Russo-Ukrainian war. We identified also the construction of historical narratives, specifically populist narratives. We had a case study focusing on the law and justice government in Poland. Then another way of using historical memory is the creation of memory sites. These can be museums or memorials. So we had a case study on the Jasenovac concentration camp in the Republic of Srpska, and the different meanings attributed to it by different actors: Serbia, Republic of Srpska, and Croatia. Then the securitization of historical memory is another very frequent instrument. So the construction of historical memory as threatened by, not just by forgetting, but by the active rewriting of some external actors. And we had a case study on China, Sino-Japanese relations in this field. And finally, this is the topic I want to go into now, we also delved into the marginalization and forgetting of the past. So not on the just on the construction of narratives, but also on the on what is left out in the selection. And forgetting, as I said, is a central component of the politics of memory. It is, in a way, it is conducted by actors which have discursive powers, so usually prime ministers or high-ranking politicians that have access to the media and hence discursive power. So it can involve stripping of social actors to cultivate their individual memories, or in other words, individual memories are suppressed in this way. However, very often, as Paul Ricoeur has noted, this process of forgetting also involves a secret complicity by the wider population, a wanting not to know or a wanting to forget. And this is the case, for example, in European countries when it comes to the memory of colonialism. Colonialism is often an embarrassing and difficult past for European countries, for European leaders in relations with the global South. But it's also something that the wider population doesn't care much about or doesn't want to hear about, because quite a lot of people were involved in colonialism. And it's a difficult memory that sometimes also involves negative consequences in the present. So there are three main types of forgetting that we identified. One is the most obvious, the passing, so the fading away of memory, the natural process of forgetting over time. Another one is the active denial of the past, the explicit denial. And then a bit more of a nuanced type is the reinterpretation and adapting the past, rewriting the past. So a good example from the literature would be the rewriting of the Cold War now. So we often hear that the Cold War was a period of stability, so a good period when there was balance of power and less conflict. And this obviously excludes the fact that people living through that period often lived on the brink, or several times lived on the brink of a nuclear war. And it also forgets the very fact that there were indeed a lot of conflicts, armed conflicts, just not in Europe, but in the global South, or in the Third World, as it was called back then. Now I will jump to my case study, which focuses on Italy. I'm also keeping an eye on the time. So Italy's politics of forgetting concerns Italy's colonial past and Italy's responsibilities in the guilt in the Second World War. Now, the colonial past of Italy is often forgotten, even though it was an important part of the country's history, and it coincided with the formation of national identity. It included episodes of what we would call today massive violations of human rights, and even based on some interpretations, genocide in Ethiopia and Libya.
Sorry, Marco. I got
yes,
the presentation from Yuri. If you want, I can show it on the full screen, but you need to tell me where to change slides.
Okay, perfect. Yes. So I interrupt my sharing here, I guess, right? So that.
Does it work?
Yes, I can see.
So just tell me where to change the slides.
Yeah. So we can go back to the slide I was on.
You did know there were no changing slides, unfortunately. That's why I also interrupted you.
Okay, all right. Okay, so you couldn't see. So yes, I presented this, and we can move to and the next one as well. Yes, so I was on these slides. So instead of remembering this difficult past, what the Italian post-World War II state did was cultivating the myth of the resistance for obvious reasons, national identity. It was a positive myth, even though it kind of marginalized the fact that only about 200,000 people were involved in anti-fascist resistance at the highest point, so in the spring of 1945. And at the same time, the so-called myth of the good Italian was built. So Italians as inherently good, as victims of war that actually suffered from German occupation. So leaving aside the fact that Italy was an ally of Nazi Germany from in the war from 1940 until September 1943. So we can go to the next slide. This myth was cultivated in cinema. Then in the next slide, you will see a few examples. Some of these are very famous movies, and cinema was, I mean, it is still today, but especially in post-war Italy, it was extremely important. So you probably know Rome Open City by Roberto Rossellini, which again exclusively portrays the victimhood of Italians. In 1964, there was even a movie which was set in the former Soviet Union. So it was about Italy's experience in the invasion of the Soviet Union. The title, Italiani brava gente, literally means Italians good people. And the movie shows Italian soldiers as victims of basically brutal ally, Nazi Germany, and doesn't show any of the crimes that Italians committed or military actions in the Soviet Union. And moving on to the next slide, this was not just a post-war trend, it continued. Mediterraneo, a movie from 1991, shows Italians occupying Greece as basically some lost soldiers making love to local women and enjoying life, playing football on the beach. And I would say that the most recent example is Comandante by De Angelis, the story of an Italian submarine commander that saves lives of people from ships that he sank. So yeah, this is the myth of the good Italian. We can now move to the next slide. So the broader context is the post-colonial condition of Italy. There was no official debate on Italy's colonial and wartime crimes, despite the extensive work that historians did, often facing harassment by public institutions and army offices. And because Italy lost its colonies suddenly at the end of the Second World War, again, there was no debate and many colonial time cliches survived. There was no critical discussion. And this also led to a racialized discussion of, racialized construction of post-war Italian identity. Okay, we can now move to the next slide. So what is the result of this in terms of foreign policy? And now I'm talking about recent and current foreign policy. This is something that concerns governments of different colors. So not just the right, but also the center and center left. So for example, the vice foreign minister until a few years ago, Manlio Di Stefano, he was deputy prime minister from 2018 to 2022, argued that Italy could be a protagonist in a new season of sincere and concrete multilateralism because we have no skeletons in our closet, we don't have a colonial tradition, we haven't dropped bombs on anyone, and so on and so forth. So he did this in a social media post, of course, completely denying the history of Italian occupation and war crimes and human rights violations in Ethiopia and Libya in the 1920s and 1930s. So this is active denial. with the next slide, I can show you another example which takes the discussion on a higher level even. Now, in September 2022, Giorgia Meloni became prime minister, and this was the first time that a politician from the post-fascist party rose to the position of prime minister. Giorgia Meloni is a member of Brothers of Italy, which is a relatively recent party founded in 2012. However, this party is a clear descendant of the Italian social movement, which was founded in 1946 by people who had been involved in the government of fascist Italy. So why was there a qualitative change here? The narrative changed to claim not just that Italians had been victims of the war and of the alliance with Nazi Germany, but actually the government tried to rewrite even the history of Italy's alliance with Nazi Germany. And this post from the Ministry of Defense from last October, the anniversary of the Battle of El Alamein. I mean, the Battle of El Alamein, you probably all know what I'm talking about, but just to repeat briefly, this was a decisive battle in North Africa in October 1942, when the troops of the Axis, led by Erwin Rommel, were defeated by a coalition led by the United Kingdom. So the Ministry of Defense tweeted that El Alamein is a place and date that tell of valor and sacrifice, a chapter as heroic as it is tragic in our history. We honor the brave Italian soldiers who fought in the sands of North Africa. With them, we remember with deference all the fallen soldiers. And here comes, I think, the most controversial part, who sacrificed their lives for our freedom. So we have the Ministry of Defense arguing that the army of fascist Italy was fighting for Italy's freedom, quite explicitly. Okay, I don't know how much time I have left, but I'm coming to the conclusion, and we can move to the next slide, which tries to put what I said in a broader context. While these mechanisms of forgetting and reassessing the fascist past are something that has specific developments in Italy, it is not a phenomenon that is entirely specific to Italy at the same time. So, for example, the lack of colonial memory is part of the national discourse in other colonial countries in Europe, and it is also a big black hole in the public memory, in the official memory of the European Union. And this despite the fact that at the time of the foundation of the European Economic Community, some member states were still had colonial empires. And we can move to the next slide. I believe there is still something. So yeah, we see processes of amnesia and little atonement about Europe's colonial past. And this has consequences today in terms of foreign policy, because while in Europe we lack critical debate on these issues, the colonial past is often a fundamental constituent of national identities in countries in the global south. And this also affects the way they see European countries such as Italy and others. And it's part of the reason, or one of the reasons, I would say, in the background, why many countries also refuse to align with Europe and the West in various crisis contexts, including the Russo-Ukrainian war. Okay, thank you very much for your attention, and I will stop here. And yes, the last slide that you showed briefly was just an example of how the capital of Europe still has all these colonial memories, and even glorifying colonial criminals such as the Belgian king.
Dear Marcus, thank you for your wonderful presentation. And we already have some oral question from Pierre, maybe from Natalia, and everybody else are very welcome to type your questions in the Zoom chat to Noah Damov, our technical moderator, or to me. Pierre, you wanted to ask something? I saw your hand reaction.
I wanted to applaud a very good presentation and give you credit for that, and I'm sort of technologically inept. But I wanted to ask also, which I think got answered here too, and I think it's a profound question. Why is it so much, there's a greater interest in dealing with the fascism, genocide, and much more horrendous crimes than with colonialism? Why is colonialism somehow less attractive than the really bad stuff? Thank you for a good presentation.
Marco, your phone is off.
Yes. My simple answer is because colonialism happened outside Europe. Genocides affected. Well, it happened in Europe. And of course, it was also institutionalized. I mean, the memory of the Holocaust was institutionalized much earlier, I would say, even at European level around the year 2000. I think another important part of the answer is that you can more easily circumscribe who was guilty of the Holocaust in a simplistic way, because by just blaming Germans, we forget the active participation of many other countries, from Vichy France to fascist Italy to, well, UPA was mentioned already. I think there's plenty of historical...
Romania as well, and many other countries of the Central and Eastern Europe, yes.
It also allows to basically forget about the fact that, for example, the Polish Home Army had a strong anti-Semitic trend component. So it allows continuing with the narratives that we have in Europe and excluding the difficult parts of national history. This would be my short answer.
Well, there are some other questions, and they are very aligned with my personal question. So the first question is, how is, in your opinion, this radical right politics, strategy, and position is aligned or is related to Eastern Europe, just mentioned? So are there similar trends in justification of fascism in general sense, Nazism, fascism, I can suppose in Hungary, in Romania, so on?
Right. So I think that every national memory discourse is specific to each country, but at the same time, we can see general trends of revisiting the interwar period, which is done by right-wing political parties, especially today in Europe, because this is the time when in many states the national right parties were created, or it's still a reference for them. When it comes to Eastern Europe, now I know you're all Eastern European experts, or even actually coming from the region. I believe that there is an additional component So whereas, for example, in Italy, well, despite the current government, it is still difficult to deny that the Communist Party, so the left, played an active role in constructing democracy, in fighting fascism. In Eastern Europe, communism and the idea of the left is very often associated with the authoritarian Soviet past. This automatically leads to looking for alternatives for the construction of national identity. And the problem is that often the alternatives are found in leaders of the interwar period, in anti-Soviet movements that were not just anti-Soviet, but also proto-fascist and very controversial in many ways.
Thank you. And another question is, by your experience at, for example, Finnish Institute, yes, where you are working right now, can you see the similar trends of justification of the Finnish participants in the Second World War together with Nazi or not? And how you could explain this?
So, right, you know that in Finland, the war between 1941 and 1945 is called Continuation War, to create a link with the 1939 Soviet attack, and also to kind of, at the same time, tone down the alliance with Nazi Germany. So it is a way of saying we were attacked first, and then there was a continuation war.
We are not guilty, yes?
Yes,
They came first.
This is basically the underlying logic. What I can say also is that the Russian attack on Ukraine in 2022, surprisingly in a way, led to reawakening of also individual memories of great uncles, grandparents who fought and sometimes died in the Winter War. So this is the broader context.
My grandfather died in the Winter War.
Right. So this is like, I think that in the case of Finland, the 2020, the war that, well, the full-scale attack in 2022 led to a return of those memories in the public space as well. And the logic was that the attack, I mean, we are not just in solidarity with Ukraine because this could be us, but this is us in a way. And yes, this also meant that all the critical debates were sidelined, and already in the Cold War period, there was a general trend, you know, Finlandization was about suppressing debate, critical debate, and also an open debate, which could have led to better assessment of the country's history and also of the role of people like Mannerheim, who was very much against Finnish democracy, as you know, and yet in the main street in Helsinki, there is a statue to him. He's still seen as a national symbol. There are Mannerheim chairs in universities. So I think, yes, that unfortunately the war, together with some national trends, prevented more thorough discussion on national memory and history.
Thank you. We have time for the final question. So I'll be reading. Marcos, thanks for your interesting talk on the topic, which is relevant to current Russian policy of hiding unpleasant facts of Stalin's repressions and many centuries of colonialism/imperialism. And is there anything happening against these amnesia trends in Italy in academic, cultural, and political areas?
So yes, especially in academia, these trends I was talking about reassessing the fascist past, they are very much driven by politics. I would say that in academia, the debate about Italian crimes has been very, very deep. However, in the political and public debate, there is a strong trend which centers around certain dates. For example, the 10th of February is now an official commemoration of the so-called Foibe. Foibe were basically some, let's call them caves, like big holes in the ground, which are very widespread in northeastern Italy at the border with Yugoslavia, where at the end of the Second World War, Tito's partisans or the locals threw the bodies of Italian, fascist time leaders, but also family members and civilians. So in a typical
like tunnels, yes?
Yeah, so retribution process. So basically what is happening now, and this government, the right has been very much promoting this, they actually created this national commemoration. These crimes against Italians are taken completely out of context. So there is no discussion of the policies of Italianization in Yugoslavia. There is no discussion about the Italian aggression of Yugoslavia in 1941. It's all about the victimization of Italians. And unfortunately, this discourse has been mainstreamed. So, for example, the President of the Republic, Mattarella, who is a centrist, he has also adopted the rhetoric of the right. So to answer the question shortly, there is very much resistance from the side of academics, but it's about discursive power, and the right has been quite successful in screaming this narrative from the media and also getting others to endorse this historical commemoration.
Thank you for the answer. Quite understandable situation, I would say, and thank you for your presentation, for bringing this case.